Welcome, dear dreamers and heartbeat chasers, to the cozy corner where emotions find their echo. Settle in, because tonight Whispers of Turkish Stars invites you into a night that glittered like a mirage and felt like a confession, where a prestigious celebration in Riyadh turned into a quiet storm that nobody saw coming. The desert wrapped the city in velvet darkness, the skyline trembled with light, and inside that grand hall, the air itself seemed to lean forward as if it knew a secret was about to be spoken. Before we drift into the golden tide of this tale, show your love to this home of whispers, subscribe, tap the bell so not a breath escapes you, and press the like if you believe the heart behind the spotlight deserves to be seen. And for those who carry us closer than a promise, the join button is your key to keep Whispers of Turkish Stars alive and glowing. Now take a breath. Imagine the sand outside sleeping, while inside, the chandeliers shed their glow like melted gold across a sea of sequins, smiles, and the hush that only big nights know. From the first step she took, Tuba didn't just arrive, she altered the atmosphere. The cameras knew it, the reporters felt it. The guests shifted subtly, bracing for grace. Her presence had that stillness you notice only when everything else is loud, a poise that doesn't ask for attention because it naturally receives it. She glided along the red carpet as if the evening were a storybook written to her stride, her gaze warm but composed, her aura inviting yet undeniably sovereign. Every lens followed, every microphone reached, and Tuba, who often turns games of insistence into dances of diplomacy, opened a softer door than usual. There was no armor in her tone, only clarity. In that vulnerability, the night began to change shape. The quick interview came like a flashlit oasis by the entrance, where the lights blinked like impatient fireflies and words tried to keep up with heartbeat. Tuba spoke about her work as though she were framing a painting. Grateful, aware, serene. She took pride in standing where Turkish artistry met international applause, and you could see it in her eyes, the satisfaction of a craft that still surprises her. Questions circled lightly until one name shifted everything. When a reporter spoke of Gawkberg Yildim, her smile didn't grow, it deepened. It carried warmth, recognition, a hint of personal history that isn't a secret but isn't public either, the sort of affection people sense even if they don't understand why. The clip would loop 1,000 times before dawn for that smile alone, because it wasn't decoration. It was evidence. She began to paint his journey not with grand claims but with the quiet permanence of steady steps. She spoke of Gökberk's patience in the face of feverish ambition all around him, the way he treats a role as a commitment rather than a conquest, how he gives himself to the invisible hours when no spotlight instructs him to be impressive. She described the stubborn tenderness he brings to his craft, the discipline that asks nothing from applause and everything from the soul. It wasn't flattery. It sounded like someone who was watched from a respectful distance and admired from the vantage point of her own hard-won experience. Then, with a gentle turn of the conversation that no one could have predicted and everyone instantly felt, Tuba spoke of Cemre Arda. The mention didn't feel like gossip, it felt like a name spoken with care. Her words didn't cast Seamra as a figure beside a star but as a center, quiet and bright, the kind of presence that never competes yet always completes. Tuba talked about balance as if it were an art, Semra's calm that requires no announcement, her warmth that thickens the air with safety, and the way a single steady heart can hold back the tide when schedules spin and flights never end and attention becomes a storm. In Tuba's telling, Cemre was not an accessory to brilliance, she was a structure that protects it. Pause with me, friends of Whispers of Turkish Stars. How often does a celebrated artist speak with such reverence for a colleague's partner? In a world that counts trophies, buzz, and opening weekends, she highlighted the unseen, the hand that doesn't wave and the voice that doesn't raise, the grace that steadies a life asked to perform even when the cameras are off. Do you believe a silent anchor can shape destiny? Share your truth in the comments, your stories are the heartbeat we follow. And if this intimacy feels like a rare jewel, remember that the join button keeps these delicate narratives alive for all of us. Back in that luminous corridor, the phones lifted higher, as though devices could reach the feeling before the mind did. The murmurs ran like silk along the press line. People weren't gawking, they were listening. As Tuba continued, she touched on the moments when pressure stretches time. International projects, calls that arrive at impossible hours, the miles that lengthen days into something heavier. That's where, she suggested, Semra's poise becomes more than comfort. It becomes rescue. Not dramatic rescue, not cinematic thunder, but the kind that looks like steady mornings and kind evenings, the clarity that slips in when someone believes in you without making a speech about it. Tuba spoke of trust that doesn't bargain, of patience that doesn't announce itself, and of the way such love can turn a stage into a home no matter how far from home you stand. In her words, you heard not rumor but recognition. It felt as if the entire city took a collective breath. Riyadh, expert in shimmer, was suddenly hosting something far more delicate, a truth that needed gentleness. Guests exchanged glances that weren't gossip-fueled but heartful, looks that said, "Did you hear that? Is this what we came for without knowing it?" Even those who thrive on scandal found themselves hushed by sincerity. There was nothing sharp in Tuba's tone, it was all soft edges and steady hands. That is why the moment landed not with noise but with weight. Inside the hall, the ceremony unfolded with its usual choreography, but the rhythm felt altered. Applause lingered. Smiles seemed less rehearsed and more real. When winners embraced, they held a heartbeat longer. In the aisles, handshakes turned into conversations. Out at the lobby, people recounted Tuba's words the way you describe a scene that refuses to fade, not analyzing it to pieces, just letting it glow in the retelling. Online, the clips multiplied like constellations. Fans translated, subtitled, posted, and reposted, in languages that made the sentiment travel faster than luggage ever could. Comments poured in. Gratitude for honesty, admiration for nuance, and relief that someone spoke of the invisible labor that keeps a brilliant life from collapsing under its own light. The night in Riyadh became two stories braided into one. One was the show, dazzle, gowns, music, applause. The other was a portrait. Tuba's rendering of Gawkberg Yildim wasn't a hymn to sudden fame, it was a prayer for endurance. She honored the long road and the quiet road, the path that earns rather than announces. And with the same breath, she offered a tribute to Cemre Arda that felt like a hand placed gently on a table to stop a glass from trembling. It was grace described as architecture. Together, Tuba seemed to say, they have built a space where love and pressure negotiate and tenderness doesn't retreat. In that sanctuary, ambition can be fierce without becoming cruel, and success can be bright without burning the skin. Around the edges of the evening, journalists who arrived hungry for sparks found themselves writing about warmth instead. They expected scandal and got sincerity. And to their surprise, it was more irresistible. Because beneath every jewel and behind every camera flash, there is a longing for something real, for a confession that doesn't wound, for admiration that asks for nothing in return. What Tuba did was simple, she named what often goes unnamed. She gave language to the support that lives outside the spotlight, to the strength that smiles without posing. And the world, starved for gentleness, devoured it as if it were rare fruit. If you're wondering what the truth of that night really was, here it is. An awards ceremony shimmered as scheduled, and within it, Tuba Bayakistan opened a window. Through it, we watched Gökberk Yildim, the craftsman, the professional who doesn't use applause as fuel because he carries a furnace within. Through it, we saw Cemre Arda, not beside him like an ornament, but surrounding him like a horizon, turning the noise outside into a rhythm he can keep time to. That is why the city listened. That is why the clip won the night. That is why whispers felt like thunder. As the final trophies found their hands and the music softened into memory, people drifted toward the exits with a new tenderness. The desert breeze met them like a secret handshake. Some called friends. Some stood still under the sky, some simply smiled to themselves for reasons they couldn't quite name. And maybe that is the magic of moments like this, they don't demand understanding. They ask only to be felt. Inside cars moving into the midnight, phones lit up again. The video replayed. The words replayed. And somewhere, across a distance that didn't feel like distance anymore, a couple maybe looked at each other and didn't need to say a thing. We, too, carry this glow together. If these whispers found the softest part of your evening, let your support be the echo. Like, share, subscribe, and help us keep this sanctuary of feeling wide open. The subscribe button and the join door are there for those who want to hold hands with whispers of Turkish stars as we continue to honor the soul behind the show. Until the next revelation, hold this truth close. Sometimes the bravest thing in a room full of noise is gentle praise. And sometimes the strongest love is the one that never asks to be seen, even as it quietly holds everything in place. Good night, dear hearts, from our whispering room to the hush of your own, until the stars lean in again and we listen together.